first guest is going to tell you in a second. Welcome inside the RP Show, everybody, here on Game Plus Television, Canada-wide TV, 31 U.S. states, including New Jersey. Dean Millard coming up on today's show. Dean Ducky Millard, famed Edmonton broadcaster. Jim Clubber-Lang, Canada's NFL expert in Hour 2. Going to be a lot of NFL stuff in Hour 2. But we welcome to the program with Moose on holidays. Moose ain't here. We got Jersey Jim, and guess where he is? New Jersey. What's up, Jimmy? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, Rod. Not much. Another sunny day here, another warm one here in New Jersey, but that's okay. Off season's here. Glad to be here. Kicking off the program hot and heavy.
Let's go. I love it. I love it. I love it. Did we say hit the show horn? And who's directing today? It's Tuna. It's Tuna Turner. And everything is happening, as Bob Cole would say. And before I let you go, Jersey Jim, before I let you go, I was thinking about this morning. I'm going to give you 16 minutes to percolate on it, so hang on. And everybody, for that matter, because I was out for a long walk listening to Dan Patrick this morning, and I'm thinking he's got to be on the Mount Rushmore of American sportscasters. So I want everybody to think, who's on the Mount Rushmore of American sportscasters and Canadian sportscasters? And you can write that in on the YouTube feed if you're watching there, or 902-518-3033. Don't just blurt it out. Put a little thought in it, for God's sakes. So the big story, Jersey Jim, before I bring you in for what I actually wanted to talk to you about, the big story is the Olympics. And up here north of the 49th parallel, Canada, we learned today, lost its appeal against the deduction of 6 points following a drone spying scandal in the Olympic women's soccer tournament. The Court of Arbitration for Sport today said its panel of 3 judges dismissed Canada's appeal and confirmed the 6-point deduction imposed Saturday by FIFA. 2 assistant coaches used drones to spy on New Zealand's practices last week before their opening game. In a way, that's like old news, other than Canada appealed, they lost, and we move on. And it all seems like old news. It was literally, Jim, last week. What's on your radar Olympic-wise, if anything at all, man? Because I know you're hockey number one. What's your Olympic viewing deal right now?
So my Olympic viewing deal is a lot of it's on Peacock here in the States. I watch a lot of the tennis in the morning because I follow the ATP WTA tours, and I'm a big tennis guy. So I've been watching like Djokovic, Alcaraz, the Americans, obviously Tommy Paul, Fritz, guys like that, the doubles. I've been watching a lot of tennis. Love the swimming. I love to watch the swimming, the diving, that kind of stuff as well. Usually throw whatever's on. If there's crew, rowing, that's fun to watch. The rugby sevens, I've been really a big fan of that. Never played rugby, but it's always fun to watch. The physicality of that sport. The soccer, obviously everybody's into the soccer. And yeah, like you said, it's kind of old news, but it reminds me of Spygate with the NFL and the New England Patriots and Pio. Yeah. So, I mean, look, if everybody's doing it, it's like the cycling and everything. Like, people cheat, okay? I guess it's part of the sport, but it's not. However, again, my Olympic... right? My Olympic viewing is really like 2 sports. It's tennis and swimming, and then whatever's on.
Hey, good for you, man. Listen, I made the mistake of dipping into the comments, and they'll wait. I'll come back on that. But here's my thing. I've been sitting there just turning on the television, similar to you. It's like the block on the program grid just says Olympics coverage. So I put it on and I watch whatever they put in front of me. I wouldn't even know where to single out to watch a sport if I wanted to, right? So I'm just going from beach volleyball to, like you say, tennis to this to that. Basketball's been big. Rugby. I'm watching it all, and I'm enjoying it all. But I will say this. I yesterday put it on NFL Network because I kind of felt like I was missing out a little bit in training camp, and it was just like, put it in my vein. It was so good. They were broadcasting from the sidelines of Vikings camp. Then they were dipping out and going down to Tampa Bay. There was a big storm there, so they were at Bucks camp and Vikings. I love that. But, I mean, the Summer Olympics only come around once every 4 years, so you got to enjoy it while you can. Okay, moving on. Make your birthday unforgettable at Golden Ticket Sports Center in Moose Jaw. Book your birthday party with us for a fun-filled celebration packed with sports, games, and endless excitement. Visit GoldenTicketSportsCenter.com to reserve. your spot today. Moving on. Listen, we're going to get to all the football, but we're not going to talk CFL with Jersey Jim. He's a hockey guy from Full Press NHL. He was at the Stanley Cup Finals. He was at the NHL Draft. He was covering free agency. And now today, for those that say they're missing hockey, and to be honest, I am too, and I'm sure you are, Jim, but I would encourage anybody as a professional recovery coach to say, instead of focusing on what isn't, enjoy what is. And that's why we're watching the Olympics and everything else. Doesn't mean we can't talk hockey. So this morning, NHL Network puts out their Stanley Cup favorite odds. And Jim and I put our heads together before the show, and you said it's very similar to what the Vegas odds are for Stanley Cup futures. And the top 5 are these. And I'm going to get your take and everybody else's that are hockey fans here. And you're on the air in Canada, so you know there's hockey fans. Number 1, the Edmonton Oilers. Number 2, the Florida Panthers. Number 3, Colorado Avalanche. Number 4, Dallas Stars, a.k.a. the usual. And then number 5, the New Jersey Devils. What? They missed the playoffs last year, Jim. They have a new coach, Sheldon Keefe. Why? What? Are you? I'm shocked, but you're there. You cover the team. Are you not shocked? They're the number 5 favorite to win the Stanley Cup this year.
To me, I think it is a little high, but I will say because of what they did in the additions, the Jacob Markstrom, the addition in goal with Jacob Markstrom, you have Jake Allen as your backup. Not to mention you add Brett Pesce, Brendan Dillon on the back end. You traded for Paul Cotter. You signed Tomas Tatar. You bring in Stefan Nason. You have the new coach. You have the weapons, Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, Timo Meier. And then obviously the defense, Luke Hughes, Simone Nemec, Jesper Bratt, Dawson Mercer's there as well. You can see why Vegas put them 5th, because are there teams behind them that are better, that can do something? Yes, but from what the Devils did in the offseason, and again, I like to say they're the way too early odds because we're in the summer. It is the offseason. Yeah. No one wins the offseason and no one wins free agency, and you don't win the Stanley Cup in the summer. If you did, then a lot of other teams would have their name on the Stanley Cup, and the Florida Panthers have theirs, and you look what they do in the offseason, and they just tweak a couple of things, and then they're right back in the final and win Stanley Cups. So I like the top 2. To me, I think Edmonton, Florida, but it will be tricky for Florida to get back to a Stanley Cup final for 3 straight years, but they still have a really, really good team. But as far as the Devils concerned, I think 5th makes sense. Again, just based on what they did in the offseason. Again, the goaltending, I think, is the biggest thing for them. They just didn't have it last year. A lot of injuries. And if, again, we saw it with Paul Maurice in Florida. It took some time to understand the coaching. If the Devils can get clicking right away, they can get right where they need to be, top of that division, and figure out a way to make a deep run in the playoffs. But again, I think sitting 5 is good. Colorado, to me, may be a little high just because, again, they don't have a number 2 center. Goaltending is a little questionable, but the usual suspects are there.
Well, Jersey Jim with us from Surprise, Jersey. Look, I'm buying everything that you're selling, but I think number 5 in a 32-team league is for somebody that we're not just hoping gets better, that we know is going to be a contender, like a New York Rangers. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of teams that could be in the top 5 ahead of the New Jersey Devils that actually went to a conference final last year or did something. Even the Vegas Golden Knights, New Jersey missed the playoffs. We don't know. But again, that's what makes these shows fun. Before we move on to the Canadian teams, by the way, you sniffed out in January, or was it February, correct me, that Jacob Markstrom was going to go to New Jersey. And it eventually happened. You called it. Can I ask you what you knew? Is that too invasive of a question?
No, it's not too invasive of a question. And yes, it was around January, February, around the turn of the month. That's when I was hearing a lot of things about Markstrom in New Jersey. And the Flames were coming through New Jersey. They were doing their trip through the New York metro area, facing the Islanders and the Rangers and the Devils. And, there were inclinations that Tom Fitzgerald was going to make an upgraded goal because you just saw at the beginning of the year that things weren't working out. And once the Dougie Hamilton injury happened and he went on LTIR, the Devils had the money to do it. They just couldn't get the package settled down, right? That was the big thing. Craig Conroy, the Flames GM, the Devils GM, Tom Fitzgerald, they were working things out, but they couldn't get across the finish line. But that was the guy they had always targeted. Yes, there were other guys. There was Olmark, there was Saros, but the asking prices were way too high. And Tom Fitzgerald knew come the summer, maybe the price goes down a little bit. He doesn't have to give up too much, and they didn't. But that was their guy. They circled him. They wanted him. And when Markstrom and the Flames ended the season, you could hear in his voice that this was the place he wanted to go. He had waived his no trade movement clause, no trade clause to come to New Jersey. And that was the only place he wanted to go. He knew about the team from Igor Sharangovich, Tyler Toffoli had talked to, guys he's played with, guys he knows. And he found out New Jersey is going to be the place. They're going to be a contender, a good young team coming up. A lot of pieces there. So they just continued to work at it, grind at it. And I always heard that Markstrom was the number one guy that they targeted, and they were going to get it done. And that was the first order of business outside of getting the coach done. And once the coach came aboard, there was a little bit of tidbit to me saying, hey, coach wants a number one goalie. We got to go get one. Here we are today. Jacob Markstrom's the number one goalie for the New Jersey Devils.
Jim's on it, y'all. Just in case you wondered. There's proof right there. And I like the fact that they had targeted him as the number one goalie they wanted, that of goalies they thought were available. There's a lot of great goalies that are entrenched with their teams. Markstrom wasn't. And speaking of that, well, watch them go on and win a Stanley Cup now, like all the other former Flames, like Tkachuk and Sam Bennett and Ryan Lomberg and these guys. So only 4 minutes left with Jimmy. We're going to get him out of here. But the Canadian teams, in terms of odds, Edmonton, Toronto, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Ottawa, and then Montreal and Calgary weren't even on the page. I had to guess. I'm guessing they got Montreal ahead of Calgary just because they're that much further ahead in a rebuild. And I don't think that's news to people in Calgary. They know that they're heading into a very painful time with their hockey team. But what they're saying is Edmonton's number 1 in Canada, Toronto's number 2 in Canada, Vancouver 3, Winnipeg 4, Ottawa 5. You go along with that?
Yeah, I'll go along with that. Absolutely. I mean, you look at it, Edmonton got to a cup final last year, fell in Game 7 of Florida Panthers, pretty much bring back their same team that they had last year with the depth guys, Perry, Henry. Use a little bit, but you add Jeff Skinner, Victor Arvidsson, a full offseason now with Chris Knobloch. Get the new GM in there, Stan Bowman. Like it, hate it, whatever. I think guys deserve second chances. Bowman has showed that. They're going to add, it takes over a good team. McDavid's there, Draisaitl. This team is ready to go, and they're motivated. They lost in Game 7. If there's a team that can get back there, even though it's tough to do, I think it's the Edmonton Oilers. Toronto, you always got to put Toronto high, but again, they got to do something in the playoffs. Vancouver lost to Edmonton. They're right there too, but again, they lost some players. It's going to be tough. That Pacific Division is always tough. And Winnipeg, to me, I think Winnipeg, there's a lot of question marks around that team, even with Connor Hellebuck there, Mark Scheifele, and Kyle Connor. They didn't really do much. They lost some pieces, but again, they always figure out a way to get it done. And again, Montreal definitely ahead of Calgary. I think Montreal's moving what they've done with their young defense. Jack Guy just signed Barron, now Caden Gooley. They're moving, taking another step closer to the playoff picture. Not there yet, maybe another year or two. And then the Sens, I think everybody expects the Senators to take another step. They should make the playoffs, or not should, I should say. I think expectations are they need to compete for a playoff spot and hopefully get in. But again, that division's tough. But I like those odds for the Canadian teams.
Jersey Jim came to play today. You haven't had any time to think about the Mount Rushmore of American broadcasters. I don't mean to hook you, and you can tap out if you want. But I'm listening to Dan Patrick going for this long walk in beautiful Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. And I'm like, Dan Patrick's got to be on that Mount Rushmore of U.S. broadcasters. And for you Canadian viewers, we'll push this for the rest of the day. And probably the boat will come into port when Jim Lang's with us next hour. But here's what I'm saying. Dan Patrick, in no particular order, Howard Cosell, Marv Albert, Bob Costas. What do you think? Just what comes to mind, Jim?
I think you got to put Costas up there. Dan Patrick. I grew up on Dan Patrick and Keith Overman on SportsCenter, The Big Show. I mean, those two guys had great chemistry. Dan Patrick to me is probably one of the best up there. Howard Cosell came into my head. Joe Buck's up there. To me is another guy that you could put up there as well on the Mount Rushmore. I have no issue with Marv Albert. Maybe I exchanged Joe Buck and Marv Albert, but I mean, to me, either way, I mean, those are great. Bob Costas is too. I mean, Costas is just synonymous. Again, Olympics. Al Michaels, that's another guy you could throw on the Mount Rushmore. There's another guy. So many great options in the American broadcasting field. But I think to me, I think if I narrowed it down, Patrick, Cosell, Al Michaels, and Costas.
Not Joe Buck? Not Joe Buck?
No, I think I'll take Buck off and I'll put Al Michaels in just because the significance. Again, he did Olympic coverage too, and he was on the call for the Miracle on Ice in Lake Placid, and he, football, and he knows a lot of stuff. But to me, I think I could go. You could replace either guy, but I think those are my four.
Yes, for three. Yes, they're all great. They're all great. As are you, Jim. Say hi to your mom for me, and let's do it again soon. Thanks for helping us out today, bro.